you ever stared into a mirror for too long when your face starts to look unfamiliar? Scientists call it the strange face illusion, a documented phenomenon where prolonged mirror gazing distorts our self-perception. Well, don't get too curious. You'll end up like me, and I wouldn't wish this demise on my worst enemy. In fact, I'll tell you what I've been through so that you don't have to ever face this. Before that night, I never paid much attention to mirrors. They were just there, unremarkable pieces of glass meant for straightening ties and checking teeth after lunch. But now I understand their true nature. They aren't windows, they're doors. And sometimes, if you look too long, something looks back. The Robertson account had me staying late again. Financial analysis meant endless hours of spreadsheets and numbers, deadlines looming over my head like storm clouds. The office emptied around 6, leaving me alone with the steady hum of fluorescent lights and the clicking of my keyboard. By 8, my third cup of coffee had run dry, and my eyes burned from staring at the screen. The 14th floor bathroom became my regular spot during these late nights. It stayed cleaner than the one near my desk, and the silence offered a brief escape from the endless columns of numbers. The motion sensors triggered as I pushed open the heavy door, lights flickering to life with an electric buzz. My reflection greeted me in the wall-length mirror, dark circles under my eyes, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up to my elbows. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wake myself up. Something moved in the mirror. I froze, water dripping down my chin. In the reflection, one of the stall doors stood open, its metal surface catching the fluorescent light. But I hadn't heard it move. I turned slowly, heart skipping a beat. All the stalls were closed. I looked back at the mirror. The stall remained open in the reflection, a dark rectangle breaking the pattern of closed doors. My rational mind scrambled for explanations. Sleep deprivation, caffeine jitters, stress playing tricks on my eyes. "Get it together, Drake," I whispered, my voice echoing against the tile walls. I approached the stalls, dress shoes clicking against the floor. One by one, I pushed each door open. Empty. All of them. The last door swung shut with a metallic clang, and I let out a shaky laugh. Just my imagination playing tricks on me. Walking back to the sink, movement caught my eye in the mirror again. A shadow, maybe, or a trick of the light. But it seemed to shift between the reflected stalls, like a dark piece of fabric disappearing around a corner. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. The bathroom remained still and empty. I hurried back to my desk, heart pounding. The office windows had turned into black mirrors in the night, reflecting the dim glow of my computer screen. As I reached for my mouse, something made me freeze. In the dark glass, my reflection's hand moved a fraction of a second too late, as if struggling to catch up with my movements. I blinked hard and looked again. Everything appeared normal, but unease settled in my stomach like spoiled milk. I gathered my things and left 20 minutes later, telling myself I was being ridiculous. That night, I dreamed of mirrors and open doors, of shadows that moved on their own and reflections that didn't quite match reality. I woke to my alarm feeling unrested, my mind still clouded with strange visions. But as I adjusted my tie in my bathroom mirror, I could have sworn I saw something dark move behind my reflection, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Might have, but I didn't. Sleep eluded me for the next few nights. my dreams filled with distorted reflections and shadowy movements, leaving me restless and irritable. The Robertson account deadline loomed closer, forcing me back to those late nights at the office despite my growing unease. I avoided the 14th floor bathroom for 3 days, using the crowded one near the break room instead. But one night, my supervisor asked for immediate revisions to the financial projections. The familiar trek up to 14 felt inevitable. The fluorescent lights sputtered as I pushed open the heavy door. Steam clouded the mirror's surface. Strange for this time of night. As it cleared, my eye caught something odd. The graffiti on the wall beside the paper towel dispenser looked different in the reflection. Reality showed the usual office scrawls, phone numbers, crude jokes, initials carved by bored interns. But in the mirror, jagged letters spelled out something else entirely. "Look behind you." My breath caught in my throat. The message appeared crude, like someone had scratched it with a key, but the letters stood perfectly clear in the reflection. I turned around slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. The bathroom remained empty, stall doors closed and still. When I faced the mirror again, the message had changed to "don't." The air grew thick, pressing against my skin like a heavy blanket. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees, and my breath fogged the mirror's surface. A strange symbol appeared in the condensation, a circle inside a triangle, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. I reached for the door handle, but the sound stopped me. Footsteps echoed from within the mirror, the distinct click of dress shoes against tile, exactly like mine but slightly out of sync. I froze, hand hovering above the handle. The sound grew closer, as if someone approached from behind, but the bathroom remained silent in reality. Back at my desk, I couldn't focus on the numbers. Every dark window became a potential mirror, every reflective surface a possible doorway. The office felt different after hours now, filled with watching shadows and whispered movements. That night, exhaustion finally drove me home. My hands shook as I unlocked my apartment door, and I avoided looking at any reflective surfaces as I made my way to the bedroom. But nature called, and I couldn't avoid my bathroom mirror forever. I kept my eyes down as I washed my hands, but something drew my gaze upward. There, in the corner of the mirror, a handprint emerged through the condensation. Not the smudged kind left by cleaning products, but a perfect impression, as if someone had pressed their palm against the other side of the glass. The fingers were longer than mine, the palm broader, the skin texture wrong in ways I couldn't quite explain. I covered every mirror in my apartment with sheets that night, but the unease followed me into my dreams. In them, I wandered endless corridors lined with mirrors, each one showing a slightly different version of reality. And in each reflection, something watched and waited, wearing a face that looked almost, but not quite, like mine. The next morning, getting ready for work, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The handprint had vanished, but a new message appeared in its place, written backward as if scrawled from the other side that displayed, "Every mirror leads home." I didn't understand what it meant then. I wish that was still the case. The Robertson account suffered as my concentration deteriorated. Numbers blurred together, and every reflection on my computer screen made me flinch. Coworkers noticed my jumpiness, the way I avoided the glass walls of conference rooms and took the stairs instead of the mirrored elevator. One particularly stressful night, the deadline pressure forced me back to the 14th floor. The familiar hum of fluorescent lights offered no comfort as I pushed open the bathroom door. Steam already clouded the mirror's surface, though the air felt ice cold. As the condensation cleared, my heart stopped. A figure stood by the sinks, blurred and indistinct, like a photograph taken in motion. My own reflection appeared sharp and clear, but this thing lurked in the background, its edges seeming to shift and writhe against the laws of physics. I whirled around, and my dress shoes squeaked against the tile floor. Empty. The bathroom stood completely empty. But in the mirror, the figure began to move. Its movements were wrong, jerky and fluid all at once, like a spider crawling underwater. It drifted toward the stalls, leaving no reflection on the tile floor beneath it. The temperature plummeted further. My breath came out in visible puffs, and the lights above flickered in irregular patterns. I glanced at my watch, but the hands had stopped moving. The second hand twitched back and forth between 9 and 10, like a trapped insect. The figure reached the last stall and slowly began to turn. Some primal instinct screamed at me to run, to get out before it completed its rotation. I stumbled backward, shoving the bathroom door open with such force it slammed against the wall. Its face pressed against the mirror from the inside, the glass bulging outward like plastic wrap. Dark holes gaped where eyes should have been, and its mouth. God, its mouth spread impossibly wide, revealing rows of teeth that seemed to spiral inward forever. I bolted, past my desk, down 14 flights of stairs, out into the night. I called in sick the next morning, citing food poisoning. My supervisor sounded concerned, but approved the time off. Around noon, I forced myself to return to gather some files needed for working from home. Everything looked normal in the daylight. My desk sat exactly as I had left it, papers scattered across the surface. I pulled open the top drawer to grab a spare USB drive, and my heart stopped. A small piece of paper lay on top of my stapler, folded like a fortune cookie slip. 3 words stood out in sharp, angular handwriting that said, "We see you." The paper disintegrated when I touched it, leaving behind a faint metallic smell and a circular symbol etched into the wood beneath, the same one I'd glimpsed in the mirror's condensation nights before. The next morning, my boss called. The mirrored windows of the office tower across the street reflected the morning sun into my apartment as he spoke. He mentioned complaints about strange noises from the 14th floor bathroom. Maintenance had investigated but found nothing wrong, except for spiderweb cracks in the mirror, spreading outward from a single point of impact. But he also mentioned something else, something that made my blood freeze. Security footage showed me entering the bathroom that night, but I never left, at least not on camera. Despite the security footage mystery, mounting deadlines forced me back to the office. The Robertson account wouldn't complete itself, though sometimes I wished it would. I arrived early, before sunrise, thinking daylight might keep the horrors at bay. My phone sat ready to record any strange occurrences, though its battery drained inexplicably fast on the 14th floor. The bathroom mirror drew me in like a magnet. Steam clouded its surface despite the cool morning air, and more symbols had appeared in the condensation. Circles within triangles, spiral patterns, letters and alphabets I'd never seen before. I raised my hand, watching my reflection. One wave, then another. The movement in the mirror lagged behind by a fraction of a second, like a video call with poor connection. I repeated the motion, faster this time. The delay grew longer. 5 seconds. 10. My reflection struggled to catch up, its movements jerky and unnatural. A pen sat on the edge of the sink. Someone's forgotten Parker, expensive and heavy. I picked it up, testing its weight. The mirror me watched, head tilted at an impossible angle. I threw the pen at the glass. Instead of bouncing off, it slipped through like a stone into dark water, leaving ripples across the surface. No sound of impact, no clatter of metal on tile from the other side. The pen simply vanished. Behind my reflection, the stall doors began to move. They swung open and slammed shut in an unseen wind, their hinges screaming in protest. But the bathroom around me remained still and silent. The fluorescent lights buzzed steadily overhead, casting shadows that didn't quite match the movements in the mirror. My fingers tingled as I approached the glass. Some deep instinct screamed at me to run, but I had to know. I pressed my palm against the surface. The mirror felt wrong, not cold and solid, but thick and viscous, like mercury. A jolt of electricity shot up my arm, burning through my veins like liquid fire. My muscles seized, but I couldn't pull away. The mirror substance clung to my skin, trying to draw me in. With a desperate yank, I freed my hand. Angry red marks traced the path of my veins from palm to elbow, pulsing with my racing heartbeat. I looked up, expecting to see my own terrified face. My reflection stood perfectly still. Its expression didn't match my wide-eyed panic or heaving breaths. Instead, a slow smirk spread across its face, stretching wider than any human mouth should. It raised its hand, the one I had just burned, and pressed it against its side of the glass. No marks marred its skin. No tremors shook its fingers. More symbols appeared in the mirror's fog, arranged in a circular pattern. Each one pulsed with a faint light, and I found myself copying them down on a scrap of paper without knowing why. Something about their arrangement seemed important, like a key I didn't yet understand how to use. The reflection's smirk widened further. Its lips moved, but instead of mirroring my movements, they formed their own words. Switch places? I fled the bathroom, clutching my burning arm. Back at my desk, I rolled up my sleeve to examine the damage. The marks had already begun to fade, leaving behind a pattern like frost on a window. But as I watched, the lines shifted and moved, arranging themselves into words. The center grows closer. My phone buzzed to life in my pocket, full battery. The screen showed 8 missed calls from my boss. According to the timestamp, I had been in the bathroom for 3 hours, though it felt like minutes. The Robertson account sat open on my computer, several pages of analysis completed in what appeared to be my handwriting, but I hadn't written a word of it. The marks on my arm faded to silvery scars that seemed to shift in certain lights. I switched to the bathroom on the 10th floor, thinking distance might help. But each mirror showed the same wrongness, the same symbols appearing in the condensation, the same cold spots, the same feeling of being watched. Morning light streamed through the office windows as I stood before the 10th floor mirror. My reflection raised its hand to scratch its head, fingers raking through dark hair. My own hands gripped the edge of the sink, knuckles white with tension. The figure in the mirror continued its absent-minded scratching, completely independent of my movements. Cold water ran over my trembling hands. A whisper drifted from the mirror's surface, barely audible above the running tap. My own voice, but wrong, hollow, like someone speaking into an empty oil drum. Soon, 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 soon. The words repeated, growing clearer with each iteration. I shut off the water, but the whispers continued. My reflection's lips remained still, though the voice was unmistakably mine. Movement caught my eye, shadows gathering in the mirror's depth. They coalesced into human shapes, looming behind my reflection. 3, then 5, then dozens of dark figures crowded the reflected bathroom. Their edges rippled like smoke, but their forms were unmistakably human. Each one bore strange markings on their skin, the same symbols I'd been seeing in the condensation, now etched into shadow flesh. I spun around, heart thundering in my chest. The bathroom stood empty, fluorescent lights humming their steady drone. But when I turned back to the mirror, the shadows had drawn closer. They pressed against the glass from the other side, leaving frost-like patterns in their wake. The patterns formed words in languages I'd never seen, yet somehow understood. Instructions, warnings, desperate pleas. Panic drove me to the 6th floor, then the 4th. Each mirror showed the same wrongness. The graffiti changed. Join us on the 6th floor. Time to switch on the 4th. But the shadows remained constant. They pressed closer in each reflection. Their featureless faces turned toward me with hungry anticipation. Back on the 14th floor, I forced myself to face the mirror where it all began. My reflection stared back, but something about its eyes seemed wrong. Darker, deeper. A smile spread across its face. Not the manic grin from before, but a look of quiet satisfaction. The shadows crowded around it, their dark hands reaching out to pat its shoulders in silent congratulation. My reflection nodded to them, then turned and walked toward the stalls. I remained frozen, watching as it moved deeper into the mirror realm until it disappeared from view entirely. The mirror showed only an empty bathroom, identical to the one around me, but devoid of my reflection. The shadows lingered at the edges, their forms stretching and twisting with silent laughter. One raised its hand, tracing a symbol in the air, a circle within a triangle, wrapped in spiraling lines. The same pattern kept appearing, like a message I wasn't yet ready to understand. My phone rang, startling me. Text messages flooded in. My boss asking why I had missed the morning meeting. Coworkers checking if I was okay. According to my phone, 5 hours had passed since I first entered the bathroom. Above the sink, a new message appeared in the condensation, written by an unseen hand. Your turn to visit. That night, I covered every mirror in my apartment with sheets, but it didn't matter. In my dreams, I copied the symbols I'd seen, arranging them in patterns that almost made sense. And somewhere in the darkness behind my eyelids, shadows whispered secrets about the spaces between reflections, about doors that opened both ways. I woke to find my notebook filled with drawings, circles, triangles, spirals, all arranged in a pattern that made my eyes hurt. And in the margin, written in handwriting almost, but not quite like mine, it said, "The ritual begins." The symbols from my notebook haunted me. I found myself drawing them everywhere, in margins, on sticky notes, even traced in coffee rings on my desk. Each pattern felt like a word in a language I almost remembered, a key to something vast and terrible. The 14th floor bathroom had changed. One night, desperate for answers, I forced myself to return. The door creaked open under my touch, hinges protesting in the darkness. The motion sensors failed to trigger, leaving me in shadow. My phone's flashlight illuminated the mirror, and my heart stopped. The reflection showed a different bathroom entirely. Cracked tiles lined the walls, dark water staining their surfaces. Rust crept down the pipes like dying vines, and black mold bloomed in the corners. The fluorescent lights on that side flickered erratically, casting strange shadows across the decomposing room. But worse than the decay were the symbols, hundreds of them, carved into every surface, glowing with a faint phosphorescence. The mirror began to hum, low at first, barely perceptible, but growing stronger as I approached. The air temperature plummeted with each step, my breath forming clouds in the beam of my flashlight. The humming resonated in my chest, vibrating through my bones like bass from a massive speaker. Faint laughter echoed from the mirror's depths, mixing with quiet sobs. The voices spoke in whispers, using words I almost recognized. They repeated the same phrases over and over, like a prayer or an incantation. With each repetition, the symbols on the walls pulsed brighter. My hand moved of its own accord, drawn to the mirror's surface. The glass rippled at my approach, mercury-like waves spreading from the point nearest my fingers. My reflection appeared suddenly, pressing its palms against the other side. Its face bore an expression of desperate hunger. I tried to pull back, but my hand stuck fast to the mirror. The surface gave way like thick syrup, drawing me in millimeter by millimeter. My reflection pushed from its side, the glass bulging outward between us. Our fingers nearly touched through the membrane of reality. A knock at the door broke the spell. I stumbled backward, falling hard against the tile floor. Light flooded the room as the motion sensors finally activated. "Drake, you okay in there?" Heidi from accounting stood in the doorway, concern etched across her face. I nodded, climbing to my feet. She frowned. "Didn't you just come up here? I saw you walking into the bathroom about 20 minutes ago. But when I came to drop off those reports..." My blood turned to ice. I had been at my desk for the past hour, hadn't I? The spreadsheets on my computer screen sat unchanged, the timestamp on my last edit confirming my memory. "Must have been someone else," I managed to croak out. Heidi shook her head. "No, it was definitely you. Same blue tie and everything. You smiled at me in the hallway." I reached up to touch my neck. My tie was red. Back at my desk, I found a new notebook page filled with symbols. The patterns were arranged in a perfect circle. In the center, words written in that almost mine handwriting. "The door opens both ways, but only if you know the words." That night, I stayed late, watching the bathroom door from my desk. At 8:15, I saw myself walk into the restroom, same suit, different tie. My doppelganger turned and smiled, eyes reflecting the fluorescent lights like mirrors themselves. The door swung shut behind it. I waited, counting the minutes. Through the crack beneath the door, light pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, and whispers carried on the air conditioning breeze. Almost time, almost ready, almost home. My life fractured like a broken mirror. Coworkers mentioned conversations I never had, meetings I never attended. The Robertson account appeared on my boss's desk, completed, signed, and dated in my handwriting. But I hadn't touched it in weeks. The symbols in my notebook grew more complex, arranging themselves into patterns while I slept. Each morning, new words appeared between the circles and triangles, fragments in ancient languages, mathematical formulas that hurt my eyes, coordinates to places that couldn't exist. The 14th floor bathroom mirror pulsed with dark energy. Each night, the glass grew thinner, reality wearing away like old fabric. I stood before it one last time, my phone recording nothing but static, the temperature dropping with each passing second. My reflection appeared without me. Its mouth opened, and for the first time, its voice carried clearly through the glass. "Come in." The words hung in the air, crystallizing in the freezing temperature. Behind my reflection, the bathroom stretched into infinity. Tiles extended into darkness, broken only by distant points of light that moved like fireflies. The light swayed in patterns that matched the symbols in my notebook, drawing closer, then retreating, beckoning like bioluminescent sirens. Movement caught my eye. The blurry figure emerged from the darkness, its form more defined than before. It walked with stuttering movements, like frames missing from a film. Each step brought it closer, its joints bending in impossible directions. Its head twisted completely backward, then snapped forward again. A hand raised an invitation, fingers too long, too numerous. More symbols burned across the walls of the mirror realm, their light casting strange shadows. Each one seemed familiar now, like letters in a half-remembered alphabet. They formed words in the air, instructions hidden in their geometric patterns. The whispers started. My name echoed from the infinite space, carried on dozens of voices. Some sounded familiar, co-workers, family, friends. Others spoke in tones no human throat could produce. The chorus grew louder, and the voices overlapped into a symphony of desperation. Drake, Drake, join us, Drake. I pressed my hands against the mirror, feeling the surface give way. My reflection reached out, its fingers intertwining with mine through the membrane. Its grip tightened, cold, strong, inexorable. A smile spread across its face, revealing too many teeth. Welcome home, it whispered in my voice. The pull came without warning. My reflection yanked hard, and reality tore like wet paper. I fell forward into the impossible cold, the mirror's surface parting around me like dark water. The bathroom lights flickered once behind me, then vanished. Darkness enveloped me, but not the empty darkness of a lightless room. This darkness moved, breathed, watched with countless unseen eyes. The symbols floated around me, their light revealing glimpses of impossible architecture, hallways that curved in directions geometry couldn't describe, staircases that led both up and down simultaneously. The thing wearing my face pulled me deeper into the mirror realm. But as we moved through that twisted space, I noticed something. The symbols on the walls weren't random. They formed patterns, repeated sequences, like words in a sentence, like instructions, like a way out. My reflection's grip tightened as if sensing my realization. Its smile stretched wider, teeth spiraling inward forever. No escaping now, it said in my voice. The center calls. But I had seen the symbols, and I was beginning to understand what they meant. The shadows watched and waited as my reflection dragged me toward something vast and hungry in the darkness. But now I know. Every prison has its key, even this one. Cold penetrated my bones as my reflection dragged me deeper into the mirror realm. Gravity felt wrong here, lighter, as if I might float away at any moment. The bathroom stretched around me, its proportions defying Euclidean geometry. Walls curved inward at impossible angles, meeting in corners that hurt my eyes to look at. The tiles shifted beneath my feet, patterns rearranging themselves into more symbols. The whispers followed me, speaking in fragments of remembered conversations. I heard my mother's voice, my first girlfriend's laugh, my boss's morning greetings, all twisted and broken, playing on an endless loop. But beneath them, something else whispered. The symbols themselves seemed to speak, their geometric patterns conveying meaning beyond language. The blurry figure materialized beside us, its features resolving into a horrific parody of my own face. My eyes, but too large and spaced too far apart. My nose, but bent at unnatural angles. My mouth, stretched into a Glasgow smile that wrapped halfway around its head. It wore my suit, but the fabric rippled and moved as if inhabited by crawling things. "Welcome home," it said with my voice, gesturing to the space around us. "You've been expected." The stall doors around us creaked open one by one. Each revealed a different impossible space, a hallway that spiraled upward into darkness, a room full of floating mirrors, a vast chamber where gravity pulled sideways. Objects floated past the doorways, office supplies, watches, phones, keys, the everyday detritus of countless victims pulled through countless mirrors. My reflection still gripped my arm, but its attention seemed divided between me and the symbols on the walls. Its eyes darted from pattern to pattern, as if reading something that worried it. Their arrangements starting to make a terrible kind of sense. "The center calls to everyone eventually," my reflection said, starting down one of the twisted corridors. Its grip tightened painfully. "But you're seeing too much." I followed, my legs moving of their own accord. Questions died in my throat as we passed more lost souls. They pressed against mirrors lining the halls, their faces distorted by terror and time. Some had been here so long they barely looked human, but each one had the same symbols carved into their skin, the same patterns I'd been drawing in my notebook. A broken mirror shard crunched under my shoe. I picked it up, hoping to use it as a weapon, but my hand moved almost automatically, tracing one of the symbols I'd seen repeated most often. The shard began to hum, vibrating with the same frequency as the mirror that had brought me here. The grotesque figure noticed, its twisted face contorting further. "Put that down," it commanded, reaching for me with too many fingers. But my reflection hesitated, its grip loosening slightly. In its eyes, I saw something close to fear. I clutched the shard tighter, blood welling from my palm. The symbols on the walls pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, their light growing stronger. Where my blood touched the mirror shard, new symbols began to form. My reflection's smile faltered. "You don't understand what you're doing." But I did. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was starting to understand exactly what I was doing. The symbols weren't just decoration or supernatural graffiti. They were a message, left by others who had been pulled through. A warning. A way out. The shadows around us grew agitated, their forms twisting in patterns that matched the symbols on the walls. They knew what I had realized, and they weren't happy about it. "Stop him," my reflection hissed, but its voice shook with uncertainty. "The center needs him." I raised the bloodied mirror shard, ready to begin what the symbols had taught me. The ritual had already started, and this time, I would be the one doing the pulling. The walls around us vibrated with otherworldly energy as I held the bloodied mirror shard. Symbols etched into the twisted surfaces began to glow brighter, their light pulsing in sync with the blood dripping from my palm. Ancient messages left by previous victims suddenly became clear, not just warnings, but instructions. My eyes traced the patterns on the walls, recognizing the same symbols I'd been unconsciously drawing for days. Circles inside triangles, spiraling lines, mathematical formulas that defied conventional geometry. They weren't random. They were a language, a blueprint, a desperate plan passed down through countless reflections. "You can't leave," my reflection snarled, its grip tightening on my arm. "The center has already chosen you." But uncertainty tinged its voice. The grotesque figure beside it shifted uneasily, its too many fingers twitching in patterns that matched the symbols on the walls. Blood from my cut palm dripped onto the twisted floor. Where each drop fell, reality rippled like a stone thrown into dark water. The whispers around us changed tone, becoming more urgent, more afraid. They knew what was happening. They'd seen it before. I began to chant my own name into the void, each syllable echoing back in countless distorted versions. The walls trembled harder. Cracks appeared in the mirrors lining the corridor, spreading like spider webs across their surfaces. The distant firefly lights retreated, dancing away into the infinite darkness. "Stop," the grotesque figure commanded, its face contorting impossibly. "The ritual is forbidden." But I continued, my voice growing stronger. My reflection tried to silence me, twisting its body into impossible shapes. Its spine bent backward, limbs coiling like rope. Its face stretched and morphed as it tried to maintain its hold on me, becoming something no longer human. The mirror shard hummed in my bleeding hand, resonating with something deep and primordial. This place had rules, and the previous victims had learned them through centuries of trial and error. My blood mixed with the ancient symbols as I moved, tracing a circle on the floor that matched the patterns in my notebook. Reality buckled around us. The shadows that had watched from the corners fled in panic, their forms dissolving into the darkness. My reflection screamed, a sound like breaking glass multiplied by infinity. "You don't understand what you're doing," it pleaded, its voice fracturing into 1,000 whispers. "The center needs us. It needs you." But I did understand. Every symbol I'd drawn, every pattern I'd traced in my sleep, they were pieces of this moment. The ritual wasn't just about escape. It was about breaking the mirror realm's hold, if only for a moment. I slammed the bloodied mirror shard into the center of the circle. Reality cracked. A hole opened in the floor, showing the familiar fluorescent lights of the real bathroom below. The pull of normal gravity felt like a siren's call. My reflection lunged, its body twisting through impossible geometries. "You'll be back," it hissed through a mouth that split its face vertically. "They always come back. The center calls until you answer." But I had seen its fear. The symbols had shown me the truth. This place was a prison, but every prison had its weaknesses. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the one afraid. I dove for the portal as the mirror realm collapsed around me. The hole began to seal, reality knitting itself back together. The last thing I heard was my reflection's voice, distant and distorted. "Watch yourself in the mirrors, Drake. We're always watching back." I landed hard on the bathroom floor, the cold tiles pressing against my face. The fluorescent lights hummed steadily overhead, their familiar buzz almost comforting after the twisted silence of the mirror realm. My phone showed 3 days had passed, though it felt like hours in that other place. The marks on my palm had already begun to heal, leaving behind silvery scars in the shape of the symbols I'd traced. But something felt wrong about my escape. Too easy, too convenient. The ritual had worked, but at what cost? I avoided mirrors entirely after that, covered every reflective surface in my apartment, took stairs instead of elevators, kept my eyes down when washing my hands. But reflections found me anyway. Windows showed my shape moving a half-second too slowly. Rain puddles rippled with faces that weren't quite mine. Chrome coffee pots in the break room twisted my features into something hungry and wrong. A yellow sticky note waited on my keyboard when I returned to work. The handwriting matched mine perfectly, each loop and curve exactly as I would write it, which read, "Watch yourself." The office felt different. Coworkers smiled too widely, their eyes following me down hallways. Heidi from accounting mentioned a conversation we'd had during my absence, something about mirrors and replacements. The janitor swore he'd seen me working late every night I was gone. The 14th floor remained abandoned. Maintenance had finally addressed the complaints, boarding up the bathroom after finding all the mirrors shattered. No one remembered who broke them. The incident report mentioned only unexplained damage and unusual symbols found carved into the walls. That night, exhausted and paranoid, I made a fatal mistake. The sheet covering my bathroom mirror had slipped, revealing a corner of glass. I caught a glimpse of my reflection as I reached to fix it. My face looked back, pale and tired, but my reflection's lips curved upward in a slight smile. I wasn't smiling. I jerked away, but something made me look back. My reflection remained perfectly still, even as I trembled. Slowly, deliberately, it tilted its head to one side. Its smile widened, revealing too many teeth. It raised one hand, pressing fingers against its side of the glass. The mirror's surface rippled. I ran. The next morning, my landlord investigated complaints about strange noises from my apartment. He found the place empty, all the mirrors shattered. A message was carved into the bathroom wall, the letters backward as if written from inside a mirror. The center still calls. I've been moving constantly since then, never staying in one place too long. Hotels with mirrors covered or removed, camping in places without reflective surfaces, but sometimes in windows or still water or the chrome of a passing car. I catch a glimpse of someone wearing my face. They're watching, waiting for me to look too long, to peer too deeply into any reflective surface. The center pulses in that other world, patient and hungry, knowing I'll return. The symbols carved into my palm burn sometimes, reminding me that the ritual goes both ways, and sooner or later, every reflection leads home. I'm writing this as a warning, though I know it's probably too late. The next time you see your reflection move wrong, don't hesitate. Run. Cover every mirror. Block every reflection. Because if you look too long, if you let yourself wonder what lies behind that silver surface, they'll invite you in too. I should know. I'm watching you as you listen to this right now, from the other side of your screen. And I'm not smiling.